This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for Tuesday, August 6th, 2024. I'm Marek Mazurek. South Korean chip manufacturer SK hynix will receive up to $450 million of federal CHIPS Act support to build its $3.87 billion semiconductor packaging facility at the Purdue Research Park in West Lafayette. News of the massive grant came from the U.S. Department of Commerce Tuesday morning when the federal agency signed a non-binding agreement with SK hynix. To receive the full investment, the company must fulfill agreed-upon milestones. The influx of funding will be in addition to the $700 million incentive agreement between SK hynix and the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, the largest economic development deal in Indiana history. The chip manufacturer announced plans in April to open a 430,000 square foot building spanning 90 acres in the second half of 2028. Total employment at the site is expected to reach more than 1,000 by 2030. Federal leaders repeatedly pointed to the project's planned facilities for research and development and advanced packaging as factors for the investment. A federal research hub will also be established in Indiana resulting from the investment and the company's relationship with Purdue University. After $4 billion in 16 years of construction, the full stretch of I-69 between Indianapolis and Evansville is now complete. On Tuesday, Governor Eric Holcomb and his two predecessors, Mike Pence and Mitch Daniels, gathered with a crowd of about 200 people to celebrate the opening of the interchange linking I-69 with I-465. That interchange is the final portion of the Evansville to Indy I-69 project, which began construction in Evansville in 2008. Lloyd Winnicky, who is the CEO of the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership, said the new road greatly improves transportation times and costs for businesses throughout the route.
I think the opening of the interstate dating back to 2012 has really enhanced businesses' ability in our region to transport finished product as well as raw material. It's given them greater flexibility and allowed them to be a more efficient operator no matter what their line of business is.
The Indiana Department of Transportation says construction at or near the I-465 interchange will continue through the end of the year, though the interchange is now open to traffic. Now that I-69 is essentially complete in Indiana, the next challenge is to link the interstate with neighboring Kentucky. Indiana and Kentucky are working together on that $1.4 billion project called the I-69 Ohio River Crossing Project. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Indiana, your bold future starts here. IBJ Media, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Economic Development Corporation invite you to the Engage Indiana series, presented by CareSource, Indiana University, and Old National Bank. With an unrelenting focus on growing Indiana's economy, our Engage Indiana events take place in every region of the state. Discover when we'll be in your area at ibj.com/engage.
The full details of the school city of Hammond's massive required spending cuts were approved recently per a posting on the district's website. The district's financial plan, termed the Corrective Action Plan, was approved late last month by the state's Distressed Unit Appeal Board and calls for nearly $30 million a year in spending cuts. The school city of Hammond has been under financial stress for a few years, and the negotiated budget comes as the district looks to avoid a state takeover. The tipping point for the significant cuts came last fall when voters in Lake County rejected a referendum that would have continued a property tax allocation to give the district revenue. Though the plan was finalized recently, the district has already begun making cuts, including closing 3 elementary schools and eliminating over 70 positions. The Indiana Department of Insurance announced on Monday the launch of the Indiana All-Payer Claims Database, a highly anticipated legislative effort to provide transparency to healthcare costs and allow consumers to compare prices across multiple health systems. By entering their insurance and zip code, the interactive tool helps users compare prices, including out-of-pocket costs and quality ratings for various procedures. The State Department of Insurance tasked OnPoint Health Data to design and maintain the claims database as part of an $8 million contract. And U.S. stocks are bouncing back, and calm is returning to Wall Street after Japan's market soared earlier Tuesday to claw back losses from its worst day since 1987. The S&P 500 was rallying by over 1% in morning trading and on track to break a brutal 3-day losing streak. It had tumbled a bit more than 6% after several weaker-than-expected reports raised worries the Federal Reserve had pressed the brakes too hard for too long on the U.S. economy through high interest rates in order to beat inflation. As of 1:30 Eastern Time, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up about 1.5%, and the Nasdaq Composite was over 2% higher. A roll-formed metal components manufacturer headquartered in Kentucky is considering Jeffersonville for a major expansion. One Southern Indiana, the Economic Development Organization for Clark and Floyd counties, said Monday that voestalpine Roll Forming Corp. would invest nearly $78 million to grow operations and create 100 jobs if the city is chosen for the project. voestalpine RFC currently operates a facility at the ports of Indiana, Jeffersonville. The expansion would add a production line for frame rails for several major global customers. Media trailblazer Pat Carlini is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. Available now from your favorite podcast provider. I'm Marek Mazurek for Inside Indiana Business Radio On Demand.